Hello, hello, and welcome to The Joy Show. I'm so glad to be back after the holidays. And this show is all about that authentic path that we take, the joy that we find in our careers and our lives, and sharing from that very authentic and honest place. So, as we begin today, I'd like to start with our land acknowledgement. And I'm honored to be meeting on the land that many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people call home here on Turtle Island. And I acknowledge and thank the original caretakers, knowledge keepers of this territory, Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat. And I give thanks to all Indigenous peoples, recorded and unrecorded, who have shared responsibility for this territory. I recognize that we're all one and that all that we do and all that we are impacts each other. So, what's happened in the past, what's happening in the present, all of it matters. And I am committed to doing whatever I can to move us forward in mutual cooperation. I recognize our oneness. Well, I'm delighted today. My guest is Brian Bachand and his website, Evolution Evolution. So this is going to be an interesting conversation from priest to executive trainer, retreat facilitator. Well, it goes on and on. Let's talk to Brian. Welcome, Brian.
Hello, Barbara. What a joy to be with you.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you here and to kind of meet you in person, rather than just emails. So that's
hmm
beautiful. So tell me a little bit about this path of yours that took you to the priesthood.
Holy smokes, that's a loaded first question. And how much time do we have?
We
Well,
got an hour, so you go.
exactly. Well, we'll dive right in. Well, first of all, again, thank you for the warm invitation to be here with you
Oh,
and
so
the beautiful
grateful.
community that you have created. And it's a joy to be here with those who are watching live and those who are watching as a replay. My story is, one that is a it, one that I'm very proud of, in a sense that it's one that as I look back, I'm just so grateful for the evolution that I've been part of. In a
Yeah,
nutshell, the life of Brian is, I grew up in Boston. I was the youngest of five children. I grew up in a Catholic family. We weren't a Catholic family that was like over the top religious in the sense that, we never said grace before meals. We did go to mass on Sunday, but God was talked about at home.
yeah,
And I really feel as a young child, I always had a sense of the divine, even though I wasn't able to articulate it at that point. There was
yeah.
always a sense that I was that sensitive kid that, if someone was being picked on the playground, I kind of really felt it. There was always a
Yeah.
sense of wanting to do the right thing. And I think, for me, one of the reasons I was first led, I think, to the priesthood was because that's what spirituality was defined for me, because that's what I grew up in. I think now when I look back, I'm like, okay, that was just because that was what I was known, but my life has evolved since then.
Yeah, it was
And
familiar.
exactly. And I think
Yeah,
the first time that my spirit, my soul was kind of articulating that was I remember being in church. It was a mid-fall morning on a Sunday. It was crisp, but the sun was bright, and we were the family that always got to church early.
yeah.
And we're sitting there on the pew, and as the sun was kind of streaming in through the stained glass windows, I remember looking at like the saints in the windows, and I leaned over to my mom and I said, "Is there a saint school you can go to?" And
Oh,
she looked at me and she's like, "What?" And I said, "Is there a school you can go to become a saint?" And I remember at that moment she said, like later she's like, "No, it's the way you live." And there were some people that go on to a seminary, and I think that's where it first kind of started. And
that's so cool.
it was very cute. It was very, very cute. So
I love the things children come up with. Like, it's so clearly articulated, that this is how you would that's how you get everywhere, right? Lawyers, doctors, you go to school. I love
yeah,
that.
Exactly. Well, and I loved school as a kid. Like I loved elementary school and I loved going. So I figured, well, if you're going to learn to do something, you have to go to the right school. So I remember
Mhm,
articulating that. But I didn't go to the seminary. I went to university,
mhm.
undergrad first. I did my university in Ohio, and I was at a Catholic university. It was, and I look back now, it was a very Catholic university. I don't know if I would make that choice now, but it was
Yeah,
the right place for me to go at that moment in my life, and I
yeah.
loved it. I really did. And it was really the last 2 years when I was in the university there where that sense of a ripening of a sense of service and
Mhm.
vocation kind of came to focus. And I remember my last year at the university, I was involved with the Catholic chaplaincy office there, as many of the young students were, and there was a posting for a retreat for anyone that thought they might be thinking about a vocation, and I signed up for that retreat, and that retreat helped me make the decision to take the next right step, which was to apply to the seminary.
Wow, that's exciting. So now you go into this and then you leave. What was the moment or the idea or the decision that said, "Yeah, it's time to go. I need something different or something more in my life?"
So I think I'll come to that and I'll answer that question, but just to build up
Okay.
a little bit,
Mhm.
you go through the seminary, which is a
Yeah,
5-year process. For me, it was 5 years. And
yeah.
it's an intense formation,
Mhm.
academic and spiritual formation, and in all kinds of assignments and where you're at. So by the time I was ordained, I was 27 hours a day, and it was young, but I would have to say
Yeah,
you're kind of an old soul at 27 with the formation you've gone through.
yeah,
And you feel it's the right place to begin that. And my first 4 years, I served as a priest in a big parish west of Boston. And I have to tell you, I loved it. Like,
yeah.
I really, absolutely loved it. It
Wow,
was a parish with 2,700 families. It
wow.
was very active, and I did weddings like I was a Las Vegas chaplain. Like it was a young parish,
Yeah,
and it was amazing. And then at the end of those 4 years, there was a new cardinal that came to Boston. And for many who are listening may recall that the sex abuse scandal in the United States kind of erupted. The epicenter began in the United States and then rippled out from there across the US,
yeah,
Canada, the rest of the world.
yeah,
And the Cardinal of Boston resigned, and there was a new Cardinal that came in, Cardinal Sean O'Malley, who was really brought in to be a healer, to bring restitution, to really work with the victims, etc. And he cleaned house when he got
mhm,
in. And one of the things he did is he appointed a new staff to work with him. And I got a
yeah,
phone call on a Thursday night ask asking me to come in for a meeting that he had selected me to be his new private secretary, which is like chief of staff.
yeah,
And that's a very big role at a very young age. And so literally 3 weeks later, I was living and working with him and going to the Vatican, every month, every other month.
wow,
And it was a tremendous privilege, but it was also where the divine started to really work within my soul and my spirit to help me become even more authentic in who I was and where I was.
yeah,
That particular role started to show me that I really didn't desire to continue my life in the church. And I'm happy to go into more specifics, as we go
yeah,
along. But it really was a moment. One night when I was out for a walk, my first year working for the Cardinal, I was dressed casually out for a walk. Um, when I saw two couples come out of a restaurant, they were gay couples. They were saying goodnight. And I remember it was like the world stood still. I was on the other
mm,
side of the street where I was like, I want that. And there had been a lot of things kind of already in my heart about my own coming to terms with my own sexual identity, my own sense of wanting to live in a sense of freedom and joy in a new way. And I knew I was being groomed for a lot more in the church, but I also knew there was this deep desire in my soul to really go forward and live in a new way with a deeper, authentic presence of who I was.
Wow, that's exciting. That, that those moments in our lives where we sort of wake up to who we really are and
Mhm,
how we want to take our gifts forward, like how we can be that light in the world, only happens when we get very deep in our own space where we find our heart space. It's like, here's my soul's calling.
mhm,
Here's where I
mhm,
have to go.
mhm.
Wow, that's exciting. That's exciting. So from there,
Dun, da, da, da. Well,
dun, dun, dun.
I think it's important, one thing I'll share too is it just didn't happen overnight. It
Yeah,
wasn't like
yeah,
I had this moment of like, oh, like I'm gonna leave. One of the things that, is quite challenging, when you become a priest is this deep sense that, it's like you're a priest forever. There's a
yes,
sense that you've been divinely called in, that, God has anointed you. You actually are anointed,
yeah,
your hands are anointed. And it's just like when we saw the coronation this past year of King Charles, like, you're anointed. That's where it comes back
yeah,
to. And so there's a sense there that, like, you can't go anywhere. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
this is it, and I didn't believe that. And I really felt that I knew I was deeply loved,
mhm,
by the people, by the cardinal, by so many. I really knew that I had gifts that were impacting people's lives, but I also knew that it wasn't the life that I wanted to spend the rest of my time being in.
yeah,
And it was scary because there were a lot of expectations upon you, family, what are people going to think, the church, there's, you know, you're a priest that's, how am I going to make a living when I leave? How do you, like, what do you do?
what
So
do you
there was a
do?
lot of fear that came up. There was a lot of anxiety. And one of the gifts that I just remember being very proactive, that I worked with someone professionally to kind
Yeah,
of unpack where I was at, that
I see,
helped me to really look at the situation, look at where I was at, help make new decisions. And for anyone who's ever gone through therapy, a lot of times there's other things that come up, the
yeah,
influence that my family had on me, my mother, things that really, were very clouded or controlled, or conditional love versus unconditional love. So working through that was also part of my healing to when I really did go to the cardinal finally and say I would like to step away from active ministry.
yeah,
I'd done the work that
important.
helped me to be able to move forward. And that also gave me the sense that I knew really just three things. One, I wanted to leave and I knew it was the right decision. Two, I wanted to go to New York City. I just knew that was the place I wanted to go.
Yeah,
And three, I knew I wanted to land a good job. Like I wasn't going to
mm,
leave until I had a good job. And
yeah,
so I was very fortunate that all three of those aligned for me when I left the church. And I left and went to New York City, and I landed as a director at the American Cancer Society in the world of philanthropy. They needed someone that could cultivate high end relationships. I had no fundraising expertise, but they hired me. They hired me. And that was the
that's
beginning of
okay.
my career.
Yeah, you had God in your corner, it's all good.
I did, and I felt divinely guided on that, and I have to
Yeah,
say, like, I look back, I was in my 30s, and I was pretty, like, brassy, like, I applied for some of these jobs, and then I would call them up and, like, introduce myself, share the story, who
oh,
I was, and it really made a difference. So I always tell people when you're applying for jobs, you know, go the extra step, like, really speak from your heart what you're seeking, because that
Yeah.
opened up the door for me. It really did.
I think that makes a huge difference in so many different areas, but what I love about your story is, and I think what I hope people would gain from this is that when we're in alignment with our true self, doors do open, things line up,
Mhm,
synchronicities become almost constant that move us in the direction that we're meant to be. And when the walls come up, it's just it's time to turn and look in another direction. But
mhm,
good for you for listening and paying attention. That journey along the spiritual path
mhm,
isn't always easy, but it's always satisfying.
mhm. Absolutely. And, it's a really great point. I'm a firm believer, and that resonates deeply what you just shared. When you
Mhm,
are in alignment, things will move. And I would
yes.
go to New York City on my days off from the Cardinal. And
Mhm.
I remember meeting with this like recruiter and this woman that she didn't have anything for me, but she kept meeting with me because she said, I just believe in you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that is something that I needed to hear. And she didn't help me
Mhm.
land a job, anything, but I really believe when you're open and you're aligned, you will be given lights of individuals, people to say things that will encourage you.
Yeah.
And that certainly was for me. And it didn't take long. It didn't take long.
I think anytime we're clear, and I mean, you were clear that you wanted to go to New York, you were clear that you were complete with
Mm,
the Cardinal, and that there was something else for you. And I think that, when that clarity comes in, I remember when I started ministry and I uh, went out and applied for a church in Vernon, British Columbia, actually, and I knew I knew when I went there and spoke that, they did candidating 3 weeks in a row with different people, and I was the first one, but I knew they were gonna hire me.
mhm,
And when I came home, I gave notice at my work. I was a realtor at the time because there's a natural progression, real estate to ministry. And
mhm,
then the other one was, I turned around and I gave notice where I was living as well
hmm.
and said, I'm leaving December 15th. The church was voting December 13th.
Oh, wow. Wow. Talk about trust.
I lived in Calgary and I was going to Vernon, BC. But it was interesting because I had absolute faith. It just felt done. And then, of course, on Sunday morning while I was waiting for the vote, I was like, oh my gosh, what if they don't take me? I quit my job Friday. Now
Yeah,
it's Sunday. But I
it's
flew
amazing.
there on the Tuesday, the 15th, and did my first service. It was a candlelight service, did that on the 16th, which was my 42nd birthday.
Oh, wow. Wow.
But it
Special
was like
memories.
yeah, and everything lined up. Like, just
Mhm,
everything lined up perfectly, and I think when we listen deep within ourselves. And you said something earlier that reminded me of something, and that is, what you should do, right? Like, we get all these shoulds in our life. We should
mhm.
do this because what is my family going to think? What are my friends going to think? What is the cardinal going to think? What are people going to think? And what people think of us is none of our business.
Yeah, that's a really good point, though, and I think it's something, I'm happy to share that it's easy to say that,
Yes, it
but
is.
it's not easy going through it, and
True.
I certainly, for me, that was it was very painful, on a few moments. I held my cards close before I made things public, I spoke to the cardinal, et cetera, which was a gift because I did that inner work. But there was tremendous um, anger and hostility from my mother. It
Okay.
was horrific, actually, to be quite honest. And it really weren't speaking. Like, it was really, really tough. But I have to say, it was also a gift because when it was happening, I was very peaceful. And
Mm,
it really showed how much of the inner work I had done. And
absolutely.
could see, okay, there were some other things here. There were also several friends, that either were clergy or people that I knew that, you know, they just felt like they had the right to say things to you,
They do.
because they almost felt like they owned you in a sense, or they thought, "What are you doing?" Or like, "The devil has done this," or da da like, it was crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And the gift of that was it really helped me. That was really where the fire was, of just realizing I just had to let them go. I
Yeah.
forgave them and I wasn't angry. And some of them have come back and some of those
Yeah.
relationships have healed. Some I've never heard from ever again.
Yeah.
So I think for me, the biggest, if anyone who's listening is in a moment, whether it's a relationship or a marriage that you're, trying to make a decision on, or a career moment, do the work that you need to do first, because that will give you peace no matter what the reaction is. And then you're in a moment of releasing,
Yeah.
because yeah, there's layers there. There's layers there.
I think anytime we do any big life changes like that, there's people around us with severe resistance.
Hmm.
It's like, one of the things I like to remind people is, kind of stay in your lane,
Hmm.
right? You have your life path, you have your decisions you have to make, and you have to live with those. And what your neighbor is doing and how they're doing it really is none of your business.
Hmm.
And you can be supportive, but to sit back and tell another person, well, don't do that, or to get mad at them because they do, and people
Hmm.
do this all the time. The joy of working with people is they will tell you how wrong you are sometimes.
Hmm.
But the truth is, I'm the only one who knows deep in my heart who I am and where I'm headed. And that's the truth for all of us, like coming to
Hmm.
that place of sort of acknowledging that you may have a judgment or a criticism about me, but the truth is, you don't know my path. You don't know me well enough to actually have that inside track on what I should or shouldn't be doing.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's funny though. It was right before we went live, before we connected, and the few minutes before we connected there, I was on my phone waiting, to for the link and to go in, and there was a message that came through from a former parishioner of mine from that parish over 20 something years ago, that
Yeah.
she said, "I just want to let you know," she keeps in touch, "I listened to your last two episodes. I do a live show that's turned into a podcast every week called Soulfully Speaking with Brian Bachand," she said, and she just
Oh,
wrote the most beautiful message. And it was, there are people, even when you do make new decisions, that become one of your greatest advocates and continue. And
yeah.
yeah, and it was beautiful. It was right before going live. I was like, "Oh my God, that was so beautiful that she took the
Oh,
time to write that." And she's so happy about, where things are. Oh, look at that. There it is. It's coming right up.
uh, my producer is the best.
Amazing. I'm quite impressed. Quite impressed. And then we did not plan this. This was not planned in any way, shape, or form.
No,
So
it was not. But she listens, and yeah, and she's in Mexico. So we're kind of all over the place here, the three of us.
amazing. Amazing. Well, that's great.
Oh, I love that. Soulfully speaking. Oh, that's beautiful. I have to check that out.
Yeah, I launched it on my birthday, which was October 17th, which is October
Hmm.
17th. I launched it in 2023. And it's a live show I do every Monday on LinkedIn. It goes live on LinkedIn at noon Eastern time. And it's
Hmm.
just 17 minutes. It's 17 minutes because it was the 17th of October. And it's what I love about the show is it's a soulful topic of topics that we can all relate to, that you can apply to your life that day with ease.
Oh, I like that.
And I have the show turn into a podcast after that you can listen to on Apple and Spotify, that your wonderful producer has shown here.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Well, I'll definitely connect on Spotify for sure. The the journey that we're on when we're talking about spirituality, I'd be curious to see or to hear from you how your spirituality has evolved over these last number of years, going from the priesthood to now doing more executive type work.
Hmm.
What has, where's your spirituality at now? Like, what is your practice, or
Yeah.
how do you relate compared to
Yeah.
Catholicism? Or do you can still, I'm Catholic and that's my path.
Hmm.
What's
Yeah, I get asked that question. It's usually the first question I always get asked. So, are you still Catholic? Or when I was leaving the priesthood, it was, are you going to stay Catholic? I'm like, well, first
yes,
of all, I'm not looking to join another religion. I spent way too many years learning and investigating. I have no interest at all to join or learn another religion at all.
yeah,
So when I actually left the church, one of the things, a belief system that I had that had really kind of been ingrained from the church or from individuals or from family was that unless you're doing God's will and God's work, you will not be blessed. You will not feel God's presence. And so not only did I leave ministry, I came out as an openly gay man. I came out, truly of who I was, and I felt blessed. Like I
yeah,
felt God guiding me,
yeah,
to those jobs and people. And it was all these things that we were told would happen to you. None of that happened. If anything, it was the opposite of everything. And so
yeah,
for me, I struggled a little bit. First few years, I didn't go to church every Sunday. I kind of took a little bit of a sabbatical, so to speak, but I still prayed. I still felt God's presence. I still prayed. And then my office was on 32nd Street, and there was a Catholic church like down the block. So
yeah.
sometimes on Mondays, I would go to church. I was like, I'm going to be like the rebel and go on Mondays. There was a noon mass. And then I would go at different times, and I kind of went in and out. But really, and then I kind of stopped it. But really, when things started to change in a beautiful, deepening way for me, was in 2018. I remember being in bed one night. At that time, I was living in Toronto and reading a magazine called Toronto Life that is an
I know
overpriced,
that.
yeah, it's an overpriced, ridiculous magazine about restaurants and
It's true.
ridiculous things. But I got it to know what was going on, and I'm in bed, and I remember turning the page, and there was a little caption about meditation,
Mm,
and it listed different places in Toronto, like meditation studios and different offerings,
yeah.
and one of them was 2 blocks from where I lived,
Handy.
and they had this special kind of, like, lunch meditation, and I went, and it was just so beautiful and resonated so deep for me,
Yeah.
and I kept going. And then I decided that, I had the time at that point. I left the firm as a partner. I was kind of in between, like, I wanted to launch my own thing, but I knew at that moment I really desired to travel, and I wanted to do a retreat. And
Mm,
I went to Australia. I had never been there, and I did this wellness retreat for a week in Queensland that
yeah,
really, I have to say, was the changing point, I think, for the rest of my adult life,
yeah,
because it deeply opened up that spirituality of who I am now, meditation, a deep sense of my intuition has always been kind of a leading force of who I am, but really
yeah,
tapping into that intuitive side, that reconnection with angels, with guides, with spirits, and really realizing and embracing that spirituality had always been there. That little boy that said, is there a saint school I can go to? That it was a reintegration of that depth of spirituality that was who I am. And so for now, meditation is a huge practice for me, but also just really a deep sense of connecting with guides, with angels, and talking to them, and being very aware of that energetic presence. And that's how I do my work. I
yeah,
feel I have a gift that I can bridge like business people that I can
Yeah.
speak about spiritual things, but in a way that's not like off-putting to them. They're
Yeah.
drawn in by an energy, and
Yeah.
that's a huge part of who I am.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, we're going to take a little commercial break and we'll be right back. You're watching The Joy Show on the New Thought Media Network and my guest, Brian Bachand, and we're going to be back in just 2 minutes or so. So don't go away.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Home Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact us at info@ntmedia.org.
Welcome back to the Joy Show. And my guest today, Brian Bachand, is here just to share all kind of great stuff with us. So when I hear about your spiritual journey, I'm curious about, you talked about how you've been able to integrate kind of spirituality into the executive or more corporate type. Can you share a little bit about how you do that? How you
Yeah,
got
happy to. One of the first things I did, it was interesting. Um, when I work with individuals one-on-one, yeah,
Mhm.
I always begin every single one of my sessions with a breathing practice. And
Okay.
I remember the first time I offered it, I was very nervous. I was so
Yeah.
nervous. I was like, "Oh my gosh, what are they gonna think?" And it's turned out to be one of the greatest aspects that all the clients, especially the executives, really love. So what I do is I begin the process right away by teaching them different breathing techniques, which I'm certified in, because I tell them this is a way to reduce your stress, open up your heart space to be more intuitively aligned. And I have found when I do that, and also when I do that with groups or teams that I lead, it changes the dynamic of the conversation. It changes what comes up and how things are expressed. And I witness right before me individuals that their energy will change
Yeah.
and they're in a clearer space. So my intention is every time I work with someone or a group, I want it to almost feel like a mini retreat. So
Mhm.
by doing the breathing practice, it's a beautiful way to do that. The other aspect that I do too is I really tap into when I'm listening to someone. I actually really tap into almost their guides, their energy. What is it that they need?
Yes.
And it was when I'm doing that, I often will say things to them sometimes, saying, you just mentioned this. Does this mean something? Like, oh my gosh, it totally does. And then that begins there. And sometimes what I do is I also give them sometimes very bespoke assignments in between the sessions that
Okay.
really help open up their soul and open up their spirits. And I often will say, working with me, I'm not a therapist and I know the fine line of that, but it will feel therapeutic at times because of the work that we do together. Because I'm a firm believer that my gift and the way I connect with them is to help them be more aligned and open their soul, that connects them to their gifts, to connect them to more to the mission that they're here to do.
And that's the most important thing, because I think, when we look at the world today, we could say, it's a bit of a mess. I don't know. I think maybe it's always been, but we're clearer about it now with the advent of social media and such. We know everything so quickly. And I think that if we can help people to find their voice
Hmm.
and to live from their real purpose and passion, I think that's how we create a much more productive, positive, and peaceful world.
Hmm.
People
Hmm.
living from their passion aren't out shooting up schools or whatever. Like uh, I think there's something there that there. And I don't know if 2024 is going to be so different from the previous years, but energetically, for me anyway, it feels like there's something happening sort of universally that is a major shift. I think we're ready for a major shift coming soon.
I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. And it was interesting, when the pandemic hit that March of 2020, when we were all kind
Yeah,
of in shell shock at home. I remember sitting on my couch. My company had only been launched a couple of months, and the name of the company is Evolution Evolution. And
yeah,
I remember just instinctively feeling, never in my wildest dreams would I ever have imagined that evolution would be so powerful at this time, because I'm a firm believer what took place, starting in 2019, 2020, has been an evolution
mhm,
of the new human and the
I
new human
agree.
soul. And so, yeah, people are different in how they want to be. They're more awake. There's a higher 5D consciousness, so to speak, of,
Yeah,
more of that alignment. And we go in and out of that, because
of
we're
course.
humans. But
Yeah.
there is something. I agree with you. This is a very critical moment.
Well, and it was interesting this year when we had our doors open for Halloween. Kids are such an interesting little barometer of the world. I think they
Mhm,
sort of are ahead of us on the curve. But the kids who came to the door this year were so kind,
mm,
so generous, so positive. It was stark. Like
mm.
it was one of those things where I sat there going, am I hearing this right? Like people would come to the door and go, "Oh, your home is so beautiful." And well, go ahead and take two candies. One kid accidentally took three, came and brought one candy back.
Wow.
Another
Wow.
one took two and gave one to their mom, going, "I get one and mom gets one." So my daughter
Amazing.
goes, "Oh, you can take another one because you get
That's
to have two."
amazing.
But it was all of the kids, and it didn't matter the age.
Mhm,
Even, at the end of the night when you're getting the 13, 14, 15-year olds, they were the same. Parents were the same. It
mm,
was it was gorgeous. It really gave me a great feeling of hope and possibility for. And I live in a big city. Toronto's a big city, and we don't always get. When you get in the big city, there's, a lot of, oh, yeah, crime rates and this and that. But Toronto actually is probably one of the safest cities in the world. But
mhm.
it's by Canadian standards, we would look at it and go, "Oh, Toronto." I wouldn't, but my family out west would.
Right,
I'm in St. Louis.
exactly.
Yeah,
But
but it's
I think there is, you know, there's someone I follow very closely, and maybe you're familiar. His name is Lee Harris. You know, he is an incredible platform. He's a channeler, but he's an intuitive and just rock solid. And you know, he's often spoken about that right now. There is like the new souls, you know, the younger generation, and you can sense that. You know, I mean, you
yeah,
know, whether or not you believe in reincarnation or not, but there is a new energy, a new generation
yeah,
that is not just a new generation, but it's a new spiritual soul of humans that are here.
yeah. And one of the things, I have a daughter who's 18, and so she just graduated last spring from high school. And in talking to her principal, I don't know, a year and a half or 2 years ago, and he was saying how surprised he was at the kids that he was dealing with. That, in teaching teenagers and being with teenagers, he had been doing it for about 15 years. He had never seen kids who were so clearly articulate and real advocates for social justice and really would present their case in a really clear and concise way without anger, frustration, any of that, but like, here's what's going on and here's how you need to deal with it. And
Mm.
he was like, not quite sure how to deal with these kids. But
It's a new
it's
era. It's a new era.
completely new. And that's exciting. That's
Mhm.
exciting.
It is.
Yeah, the world is changing. So, what's next for you? Like,
Mm,
as you journey along, what's kind of in
mm.
your field of vision for the next few steps?
You know, I would say it's interesting. Just you know, for anyone who's an entrepreneur who's listening, or like yourself, I would say one of the hardest things I've ever done is one of the hardest, but one of the greatest joys is starting your own company because you know
Mhm.
it's easy to be not always easy, you know, being part of an organization, which I certainly have been part of,
Yeah,
but you know it's something to know you have a concrete job description, you have direct
yeah,
deposits, you know, you know what things are about. When you have your own company,
yeah.
there's a lot of other layers, and it's at a
There
beautiful
is.
moment right now, especially launching right before a pandemic,
Yeah,
there's been an evolution. I firmly believe as you evolve, the company evolves. One of the
yeah.
biggest things that I really love is the retreat aspect.
Me
And
too. Yes.
that is really a big intention to keep growing that. That is something that's very big. Also, I'll say it here is, you know, I definitely desire to, you know, complete my book this year as well. That's
Ah,
been something for a
good.
while, just
Yeah.
very early stages. That's kind of one of the biggest things. And the reason, you know, it's like everyone in the world seems to have a book, but what my intention is that it really has an energy to connect with humans on their walk of where they are,
I love
because I
that.
believe our stories are only powerful if they inspire others on on their journey and their story. So that's kind of a big focus area, and so yeah, that's one of the biggest things.
That's beautiful because I think one of the things that I enjoy reading the most are people's stories of their life and how it's evolved. I find that
Hmm.
so fascinating, and there's, a lot of great books out there, of course, millions of them, but there's always room for one more. And
Hmm.
I remember years ago, walking through a bookstore, and it was a kind of a difficult time in my life. I was studying ministry at the time, and there was lots of things going on. I was a single parent, and as I'm walking through this bookstore, all of a sudden a book fell off the shelf. And
No coincidence. No coincidence.
none. So I pick it up and I go, and it's called Soul Retrieval. And I'm
Mm.
like, okay, well, it fell off the shelf at my feet, so I bought it. And little did I know, all I had to do was open it up, read the first paragraph, and that would be sufficient. But but I
Yeah.
bought it anyway. Took it home, read that first paragraph, and I went, "Oh my goodness." I had struggled almost all of my life with pain in my stomach.
Mm,
And one of the first things in the book was about the solar plexus and how energy there is all about the ego.
mm.
And I was like, oh, well, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was able to, with my spiritual practice, make some shifts and changes and actually heal something that had been a chronic thing my whole life. And it was
Beautiful.
just that one sentence in that one paragraph.
That's amazing.
But I think information comes to us in remarkable ways. Even the way you and I met
Mm,
is kind of kind of fascinating, and I'm really grateful that you went, "Hey, we need to talk," um, because I love hearing about the journey that each of us are on, and the spiritual aspect for me is it's like breathing, it's
mm,
not an optional thing. It just is what it is. And I think everything, if we look at our lives going, if there's an area that's stuck, there isn't something we need to do, but there is something we need to be.
mhm.
And I think for me, that's been a big shift. As an entrepreneur as well, I launched the Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake in 2020 October.
Wow.
How
Wow.
good was that for timing?
I totally get it. I totally get it. But, I think, again, there's a divine reason why we
There is.
launched them at that time, and
Yeah.
I'm grateful for it. Like, I'm very grateful. It was easier to build and start a company that the world was going online, and to be at
Yes.
ease on that. That was never my intention, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? To do so much and just about everything online. I'm probably the only person in the world that loves Zoom. So, I love it. Like, I think it's great. I think it's just incredible what you can do and connect with.
Too.
I always love the in person. I remember it was 2 years ago. I did my first in person keynote. I was asked to do a keynote address. It was actually in the Cayman Islands, which was amazing.
Oh, nice.
And it was fun, to be, flown down and to be there and to be live in person. There was a different energy. But I have to say, being on the stage, and I'm used to public speaking, I felt a little rusty. You know what I mean? Like when you get up there, like, you know what I mean? The room, it's
Yeah,
different.
it is
And
different.
yeah, but it's
Yeah.
great. But I kind of like both. I like both.
I like both as well. I like the fact that, we have a blizzard coming in this weekend and I don't have to get in my car and drive to church Sunday morning. I can
That's
just
a
do
good
it
thing.
from here. But I think the whole concept of Zoom, I was fortunate when we went into lockdown because I had been teaching classes on Zoom for a few years at that point, 2 or
Okay.
3 years. I don't know when it first came out, but I was really comfortable with it. So switching to Zoom was just a matter of sending an email out to all of the members of the congregation going, "Here's how we're meeting this week."
Yeah.
And we have a lot of seniors in church, which many churches do, and so it was, and here, if you do not have a computer or whatever, here's how you're going to get on with your home phone.
Mm,
And being able to do that was incredible.
yeah.
They couldn't see anything, but they could hear all of it. And it
Yeah,
really
exactly.
opened the doors for a lot of people, which I think, again, is how do we make things accessible? And this has done that. Zoom is brilliant.
Yeah, it really is. It really, really is.
Mhm.
So, yeah, and I look forward to doing more programs online for groups
Yeah.
and different things. That's a big intention as well.
Well, the nice thing about it is that you can have people from anywhere in the world. You're not
Hmm.
limited to the people who can get to you close, that live
Exactly.
close by. I know for my center, I have number of people from Calgary, from Saskatchewan, from Saskatoon, from different areas of Ontario, but also in the US. I've got
Hmm.
people from Arkansas and from the from the islands as well, down in the Caribbean. So people can find us so much easier this way as well.
Yeah, which is
Share the
great.
message wide and wide and wide.
Absolutely.
Well, we're coming down to our last 10 minutes. And what I like to do at the end of the show is always talk about something that people can really use as a takeaway. What is probably the most important thing about your life and your journey that another person could take and use to begin to create a more conscious, authentic experience for themselves?
Hmm.
Any thoughts on that?
So there's two things that come to mind. The first thing is it's funny. It's a simple question that I actually started. I didn't know how impactful it was going to be. I actually started it when I was in the seminary. Saturdays were kind of a free day,
Mhm.
and but we had like sometimes like a prayer in the morning, and then we were free after that. But the big thing after chapel in the morning was getting your bagel. And I remember being in the kitchen. It was one of those bagel machines that you put it in. You take the bagel apart, you put it on this toaster, and it goes in, and then it drops out. And it kind of
Yeah,
falls down. And it was never the first time that it was toasted. You always had to put it in a second time and watch the thing go through and wait for it to go through. And
yeah.
usually, when I was waiting for it to fall out the second time, I started to ask myself a question. And the question was this simple: what do I desire today?
Hmm,
And
I like that.
what do I desire today? And I used to just kind of be still when I was there waiting for the bagel. In that moment, I would ask myself, what do I desire? And there was a big window. I used to just look out and I used to just be still. And sometimes it was just a feeling or a thought or an image that would come to me. It might be, I just want to go for a walk. I might be a sense of, I desire like a movie, or I desire to be with friends. And I always followed it. I never doubted it. I didn't second guess it. I always followed it. So
Mm,
that question is something I do with my clients as well. What do I desire?
um,
And yeah, and a great way to do that, if to really be clear, is, take some deep breaths, close your eyes, and just ask that question and just feel, or whatever comes, just follow that. And it's a great way to help take the next right action and the next right action and the next right action and to move forward. And, that's some of the bigger work you can also do when you ask that question. And there's ways you can do that, can really unearth what your spirit and your soul is trying to lead you towards. So that's one thing I would leave with individuals. Number two, the other thing that I would certainly say that is just one of the most important things in the world, I would say, is go walking. I know it sounds very simple, but go for a walk.
go for a walk.
And go for a walk. And, I'm a big runner. I love running. I love doing all kinds of things, but there's something powerful about walking. If you're in a moment that you don't have a lot of time, or it doesn't matter if you live in a city, you live in the country, I don't care where you live. Everyone can go for a walk if you're able to
Yeah,
physically walk,
yeah,
because it clears the mind, it opens up the cardiovascular, but it moves the energy of the body,
yeah.
and it also connects you to the elements of the earth. The earth you're walking on, the air you're breathing. You look up to the sky. Do not listen to your phone, and don't look at that. But
Don't listen to Brian's podcast while you're
well,
walking.
that's the only thing you can listen to. But, at least for the first 17 minutes, then you can shut it off. But I would say, but it's a beautiful way. Walking is a powerful way of connecting and also letting go. And it really can have tremendous positive spiritual insights, even if it's for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever you can do.
Yeah.
If you're stuck, if you're trying to work through something, if something's on your mind, go for a walk.
I
And
love that.
yeah, keep it simple. And the simplicity will always lead you back to your spirit.
Well, I love that. It's I think the journey that we're all on is that we're spending a little too much time indoors and on Zoom and whatever. And I think that idea of getting outside is so important. I love what the Japanese do, where they do forest bathing, where they go out in the forest and hug trees and they're just connected to nature. And I think I remember a friend of mine who used to do my hair when I was living in Calgary, and he had a near death experience. Really, he had AIDS and he was really really sick, but then managed to recover. And from the time he recovered, he stopped wearing shoes. He
Hmm.
went, I'm touching the earth.
Hmm.
I'm touching the earth. And that always stayed with me. Like, it would be cold. I mean, Calgary is not the warmest place in the world, right?
Right.
And he would be out with sandals and bare feet. He'd only have the sandals on, like if it was snowing or something. Other than that, he was barefoot.
Wow.
It's like I'm watching him going, wow. And he said, no, I have to feel alive. I have to feel connected. And that was his whole journey, is
Mm,
making sure that he connected with Mother Earth and life itself.
beautiful.
Well, this has been delightful. I'm really, really glad we met. I'm so glad you said yes to this. And I would like to invite you on our other show, which is called Spirit Cafe.
Mm,
And Spirit Cafe is where we have courageous conversations.
mm.
So we
Well,
talk about all the stuff you're not supposed to talk about in public.
Well, I would be delighted to be a guest there, and I would love to be part of that. And thank you so much for this opportunity to share, and thank you for everyone who's listening as well, and for all the beautiful things that you're doing to bring that light into the world, and
Yeah.
welcome that opportunity to continue the conversation.
Yeah, it's so important just to keep talking, just to hear different ideas, and to be able to share authentically, honestly, even if we disagree. It's perfectly fine. It's a matter of just sharing what's present for us at the moment. And what's alive in me at the moment is just how wonderful it is to meet you,
Thank
and
you.
that your journey reminds me so much of my own, of really connecting with God in a way that is beyond words, hard to explain because it's so complete. And for me, I know God is love.
Mm.
And I got to say, my friend, I love you. Thank
Well,
you for
thank
being here. Thank all of you for watching. Please be sure to come back, like, share, subscribe, and hey, donate to the New Thought Media Network. It's what's keeping us going. Have a wonderful week, everybody. And Brian, if you just hang on for a minute, uh, have a great day, everybody, and come back next week. Bye for now.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.